Okay, so we're just about live. Yeah, welcome everyone to the final Buller District Council meeting for 2023, Wednesday the 13th of December. We have one member of the public to speak in public forum, and they are speaking on agenda item 10, and I'll just signal my intention to bring that forward to be discussed as agenda item 4. If that's okay with the table, and just rather than having those members of the public hanging around for later in the meeting, we'll deal with that business fairly promptly. So without further ado, Jackie, 5 minutes. Thanks. Free. You can come up to the corner there if you like, or
sit there if you like.
Well, can I sit there? Yeah, just be
Someone on the screen as well.
Oh, fantastic. Sorry, unprompted or early chat on this. I just had a little bit of feedback on the item from some councillors, and the main question that was coming through was related to the proposed split of the funding, and so I just wanted to clarify that for you. I've done some analysis of the Reserve Board's funding for the last 5 years in terms of the split between the hall revenue and the reserve revenue, and for the last 5 years the hall revenue has exceeded the reserve revenue quite substantially, and as a consequence also the expenditure for the hall is higher than the reserve. So the reserve land, which is predominantly just the hall domain and a couple of pieces of reserve and other lands around that are leased at nominal cost, brings in at about $1,500 a year, including a minimal sports ground fee paid by the football club, who for the privilege also mow the field, and we have arrangements for funding of the equipment and the fuel for that. So minimal expense to the reserve for the land, maximum expenses come through to the hall. So the proposal would be for a split of that revenue to go to the society at 70% roughly. That's what I'm looking at, but I'd be working with Douglas and other staff just to make sure that I've got that right. 70% to of the remaining funds, excluding, you might recall some funding that we received recently to replace the fence along the reserve. That's out. That was 18,000. That's out of this equation. That we'd be looking to split to the society for the operation of the hall. So I just wanted to clarify that particular aspect for you guys.
thank you. Anyone have any questions for Jackie on agenda item 10? That's the Ngakawau Hall discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, councillors, we'll move straight into the meeting with agenda item 1. Or did I declare it open?
No.
Sorry, it was declared open at 3:31. Right, agenda item 1 is apologies. So we have an apology from Ned Talford, and just noting Councillor Linda Webb attending via Zoom today, just for noting. Any other apologies? Somebody like to move those? Councillor Weston, seconded Councillor Farlett. All those in favour? Any against? It's carried unanimously. Members' interest, are there any items on today's agenda for which members wish to declare a financial or non-financial interest? Nothing heard. I move there's nothing to record. Seconded Councillor Farlett. All those in favour? Any against? It's carried. Thank you. Agenda item 3 is the confirmation of minutes of the council meeting, the public minutes from the council meeting held 29th of November 2023. Are there any matters of correction in those minutes? Nothing heard. Would somebody like to move those as true and correct? Deputy Mayor Basher, seconded Councillor Grafton. All those in favour? Any against? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Right, we will now deal with agenda item 10, page 171 on diligent. And we've had a little bit of extra detail added by Jackie, but I'll look to Bronwyn, who will talk us through her report, and then we will deal with some questions on that. Bronwyn, please.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. The issue around what's called ownership of the Ngakawau board has been an issue which was raised initially with the reserve subcommittees coming into existence. At that time, it was assumed by council that all the halls that were on reserve land were part of domain boards and were administered and owned by domain boards in some way. So when domain boards in 1989 became reserve committees, when domain boards were dissolved and they all became part of Bulla District Council. And to manage those, council at that time created reserve subcommittees and reserve committees, which were basically just created and then went gone. Nobody went back to check them or to reappoint them, and that was the point in 2019 where we had legal advice that said, hey, hang on, you need to be reappointing them. Let's look at the concept of subcommittees at the end of each term. And so that's where it came from. And so those subcommittees were assumed to have by council, not necessarily by anyone else, but were assumed to have ownership of the halls that sat on the reserves. As you know, we've been talking with Ngakawau for ever since 2019 really regarding the ownership, and we've now had the time, and we have been able to talk directly with Ngakawau people, the community, the representatives from that community. And we believe now, having seen a number of documents back at the time when the War Memorial Hall was built, back in the 1940s, when it was built by the Bulla Mining Districts Community Centre Society, who built quite a few of them in the Northern Bulla. We believe now that at that time it was understood that the society were in fact the owners. We've seen a number of documents which would support that very strongly, including the one that's included as Appendix 1. So when they went to get some funding from the Department of Internal Affairs, who were providing funding throughout New Zealand for memorial halls, it was a society that went to the Department of Internal Affairs. It was a society that was assumed by the Department of Internal Affairs, that the controlling authority was to be the Bulla Mining Districts Community Centre. Now, the people who were on that society also happened to be on the domain board, as we understand it, and given it was a small community, those people were basically the same people. That's probably where the confusion arose, with the domain board just naturally also doing the work of the owners of the hall. As staff and as officers of council, we now believe that it's time to clear it up, that we now have that information, we are securing that information, that the society was the owner of the hall, that it was not the property of the domain board, which in the 1989 reorganisation order clearly states property of the domain board and the property of the new council. However, this fell outside of that, and we believe it's now time to move on. The Northern Bulla Community Society is stepping up. They're in discussions with the Bylaw Mining District Community Centre Society to take on the responsibility into the future. We believe the way to go is to acknowledge the ownership sits with the society at the moment, but that it's the intention that it will sit with the Northern Bylaw Community Society. In which case we, as a council, can remove ourselves from discussions, management, administration, ownership discussions. We, as a council, still have responsibility for the land underneath the hall, the reserve, that's under the Reserves Act. And therefore, we will be encouraging council to enter into negotiations once the Northern Bylaw community, the Northern Bylaw Community Society has formal handover, that we enter into a license to occupy. A license to occupy for the hall is an easier process than providing a lease. Leases are very difficult over research. You have to go to the Minister of Lands. We believe that we can put together just a very simple license to occupy, and that the hall will be able to go on functioning. And as Jackie was talking about just before, the financial situation, we believe that by working as council staff and society working together, we can find a fair and equitable way to distribute those finances to enable both the reserve to still function, to function perfectly well with its income and very few expenses, and to allow a community asset that is the hall to continue to function, to continue to be able to cover its expenses with the income it receives, and to move forward so that the community actually gets the best of both worlds. Gets the reserve taken care of, and it gets the hall very successfully managed as it has been in the past. And that is the conclusion of the report.
Okay, thank you. So we'll take questions before we get into any kind of debate. So I've only got one, and Jackie clarified it around the finances and divvying it up. From a staff point of view, I'm just thinking belts and braces from a public perception point of view. Should that final div up come back to council for approval and say this is what council approves in terms of how it's split between the two societies, just so that it's not just lost and there's any perception that it's being unfairly divided or whatever? Is that something we should do, or what's your view there?
It would be my view, through your worship, that it could come back to you. It could come back in the new year, when we've made very clear the division of it, and going back 5 years as Jackie's done, we'll make that very clear. If you're happy with that.
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Chair, look, I think what we can commit to is we've had pretty good discussions with Jackie in the last couple of months about ensuring that this gets to the right outcome for the community. What I will do is bring this back as an update through my CEO report, because I'll be negotiating this with Jackie and the team. So I'll bring an update back through there, and if appropriate, we'll have a recommendation so that you can endorse that approach.
Thanks. Councillor Sampson?
On that note, I'd really like to thank Steve and Bronwyn for getting that report together and working with Jackie, because it's, as we all know, it's been an ongoing issue and it's been well researched and a really good report. So thanks to all those.
Councillor Weston?
Yeah, just a question for Bronwyn. Is there any of the other 8 walls got on that system?
Yes, so Jackie might be able to answer it better than I can, but I believe the one at Mokanui was one of those. It was called Waimari at that time. I'll just look through and see where the other ones were. The Militant Wall is still in existence. The Ramsey Wall is still there, I think. Waimangaroa Hall, not the one that we look after, but the one at the back of behind the coffee cart. Those are the ones that I know about. Yes, they are not, however, those ones aren't on reserve land. So we don't have, except for the Mokanui one, obviously, we don't have quite as much to do with them.
Do you have something to add, councillor Sam?
Yeah, just on that, yeah. Sevenville is building that they thought was their own ownership and the Longanui, but I think they are in different situations, so things are just sitting there at the moment, yeah.
Yes, councillor Naylor, and then back to you, Joe.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just a bit of clarification over the subcommittee. Will that still exist?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, yes,
Yeah.
it will be meeting, it will still be appointed exactly the same way, but it will only oversee the actual reserve itself.
So when you say appointed, are we going to reappoint or call for new nominations or just simply transfer?
No, this, yes, through the subcommittee will just continue to work and its workload will be down to the reserve land itself.
Councillor Howard?
Just a bit of clarity around the finances. We're only talking about the money in the bank account. We're not talking about who contributes what to the asset is being redistributed.
And it's my understanding that yes, it's what we'll be looking at the trend over the last 5 years in the bank accounts. And that will be the determination of the split of the bank account of the finance.
So the asset itself is just passing through as it stands today. Yep. Does that answer your question? Yep. Councillor Fowler?
I just think that from our discussion, the number 6 point sort of doesn't reflect what we're agreeing on. So I read it as fair and equitable division. Like, to me that is 50-50 split, but that's not what we mean, is it?
No, through you, Mr. Chair. No, that fair and equitable is based on, I think, the historic trend of expenditure between the reserve and the hall, and that for me is what fair and equitable. But again, the partnership with the committee and the volunteers and the community, we need to both agree what fair and equitable looks like.
Who else? Councillor Reddy?
Material, but I think you, Mr. Mayor, just item 5, instructs the Chief Executive to remove the hall from the Council's asset register. So I'm assuming that would have been back in the day, 89, figure would have been allocated to the monthly report of the balance sheet. The sort of the CEO's delegation to remove. Question is really, there is no financial impact, so I just want to be aware of the, if you like, transaction that takes place, but that's not for here. Just there is a journal entry involved. It could be some financials and how that's accounted for. That's all.
So, through you, Mr. Chair, look, I can commit to bringing back in my update on the progress of this transfer of asset and operation. In my CEO report, I'll touch on anything that has a financial change.
Yeah. We just would everyone feel more comfortable if we just add something to that 0.5 around that it will come back through the Chief Executive Officer's report, or we put it on an action point or something?
Comfortable if it was possibly a 9th recommendation to request the Chief Executive to report back to Council on progress.
Yeah.
If I could just say, Mr. Mayor, your comment regarding number 5 also applies to number 6 in that case. So both 5 and 6.
So we'll do it as separate. We'll do a number 9. So just think about some words for that. Okay, I think we've couched that one. Anything else?
I just would like to pass my thanks on behalf of our team to the volunteers in the community who have tirelessly raised this matter and been awesome advocates for your community. So thank you very much for your contribution, and hopefully you're pretty happy with the outcome.
I'll invite my Northern Buller candidates if they wanted to move the 1 through 8 or.
I'll move 1 to 9.
Yep.
Those words and 9 are going to be.
Okay, we need to hash that out now then.
Okay. Request the chief executive to bring a progress report back on recommendation 5 and 6, because then that basically covers those two.
Yep.
Through his chief executive's report next year.
Got that? Everyone understand that one? So that's 1 through 9, moved Sampson, seconded O'Keefe. All those in favour? Any against? That's carried unanimously. Congratulations, Jackie. You now have a whole look after that you were looking after anyway. Okay, thank you. Righto, thank you, everybody. Right, we'll go back to agenda item 4, which is our action point list. And there is only one item on there which reports in February 24. So if everyone is happy with that.
Thanks, Mr. Reid. Can I have a bit of clarification? I understand we had a presentation at the last public forum on this. But has the council resolved for the staff to proceed to extend the lease, or because there's been no council resolution in that way?
My understanding it's a straight out report back, but
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Like in the minutes, it also reflected the requirement for the CFO, Douglas Marshall, to actually instigate a meeting with the property owner, the campground owner, early in the new year to progress that matter. So that was probably the only other action that I'd note in there.
So define and progress this matter forward, is that to look at extending the lease?
With Mr. Marshall out of the room, it will be looking at how do we get this issue resolved. So if that's progressing the lease, yes. If that's another instrument, we will bring that back. But that'll be part of that paper in February.
so my understanding is in response, sorry for jumping in, Paul. Yeah, I need to apologise on the chair. I'm jumping in. My understanding is what we requested off the back of the public forum, because there was no paper to support that on the agenda, was to ask staff to go and meet with the leasee and figure out what it is. He's got his master plan documents and whatever, and form that into what does that need from council to consider. And so then there'd be a paper coming through if the advantageous thing to move that along is a extension of the lease or some other instrument or a sale or whatever, then all of that would come for a council decision. So this was just to initiate a paper to come back to council.
Presuming that it would be an option of not extending the lease.
Yeah, so it would be that would be one of the options in a paper, I would imagine. Yeah. There's certainly been no decision made to do that. It's about, my understanding was, and I want to be really clear, that this is just about authorising staff to gather some information and report back as to what next steps need to be.
So can we just confirm exactly what you have said, because I was of the same as my reading of Graham, that it was sort of to negotiate a lease, and I got quite uncomfortable there too. So what you've said gives me confidence that a report will come back, not lease negotiated.
Yep, certainly my understanding, but do we need to tidy up the wording?
Like that.
Did we?
Well, we're just a bit worried that there seemed to be an indication that we were going to progress extending the lease when there's been no council resolution. We can't do that from a public forum presentation. We need a paper.
That's correct.
Yeah, that was the intent of the action point, was to authorise the paper to come to council. Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before presentation, there was an email sent out regarding some information that has been provided by Mr. Finlay. One of them, of course, discussed, which I wasn't aware of at the time, that as far as the lease is concerned, the property actually belongs to conservation dock, and we essentially lease that off BBC lease that off, dock, and then sublease it on to Mr. Finley. Now, it was a 20-year lease from memory, expires at about 2030, and he's looking for some, before he does an investment, he's looking for some security. And so the question I have when I read that paper, well, if he's paying us lease rental on that property, are we paying lease rental to Doc? I mean, that paper that came out, I've never seen before. We've discussed with the guy here on a number of other occasions, and then a great piece of paper, a great report, and also I understand Brett Barry's also produced a report for Mr. Finley. So there's a lot of information there. I understand where Rosalie and Graham are coming from, but I'm happy with the report at the moment, the action point. But we just need to get some finalisation here because this guy needs to move on, one way or the other.
Yeah.
And then, as I say, can we also include that paper? So I'm sorry, carrying on. The attachments that were sent out by Gina. Can we at least have those also included in any future agenda items so that we're all okay with what we're dealing with?
Oh, that he sent me.
He sent me, sorry, Mr. Mayor, but I believe you said that
Yes.
sent it out
Prior
to
to
all elected members.
Yeah.
The night before the meeting.
Yeah.
I'm just asking if that would be considered.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Councillor, I think when we bring the paper back, obviously any supporting information that backs up the content of the paper and the recommendations will be provided, and it's obviously quite material. But let the team go away, and I think they've taken, through the minutes, we'll take the guidance from a table, and I think the report that you get back should deal with all of those issues that you've raised today.
Happy to move, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, moving the action point list, seconded.
Just wonder the action point around the Ngakawau Hall needs to be added to the action point list, or not, there's just.
No, we included it as an
It's an
additional.
additional recommendation, so I think that's dealt with in the previous paper.
Yep. So someone happy to second? You seconding? Seconded, Councillor Fowler. All those in favour of the action point list? Any against? That's carried unanimous. Thank you. Right, we move on to the rubbish collection zone 1 level of service consultation options and proposed next steps. And I'll look straight probably to Mr. Duff to talk through this report before we go to questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm pleased to bring this report through, which aims to do a number of things. Firstly, include the consultation process that began in August this year, and I'd just like to recognise the Regulatory Hearings Committee and Councillor Howland for leading that process. We of course have the submissions and staff have done the review of those submissions and moves us towards the next part that this report takes to, which is evaluating the options that have come through. The key thing around the options is really the structure of a decision around the provider. So the two main themes here are continue with the private sector provider or to take that within council operations. That's the first decision. Then there are different funding mechanisms to decide on, and then ultimately a service level structures, which is where you get down to bins and lot sizes and frequencies. So what we're going to do there is to simplify the framework and design the recommendations that we're bringing forward in that way, so that ultimately it's clear what the options that staff are recommending, and then finally the scenarios, which are really how the process to move forward could look like. We've made a recommendation about doing that by reconsulting with the community with that recommended suite of options, and importantly to do that off estimate pricing versus tender pricing, which is the main difference between scenario 2 and scenario 3. We'd like to also acknowledge staff who have helped put this work together, and, happy to take questions.
Thank you. Right, questions, councillors? If there are any? Okay. So, sorry.
I know you're trying to do it.
Yeah, you're in a different place.
Do we have a cost for the consultation to date?
Cost to date?
Of the consultation on the waste? Because, yeah, it's recommended here that we consult again. It means that we're consulting on consultation. And do we have to turn around and consult again? But it's just another added cost at the stage when we're looking at our budgets, and I'm just shaking my head because I don't think we should be consulting on consultation. And I'd like to know what the cost to date has been for this one.
Righto. Probably, okay, yep, can you answer that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, obviously staff costs are not accounted to this, so that's not an additional cost. I can come back with any external costs that have been booked to the first consultation process.
So I guess probably perhaps to rephrase the question, is there a ballpark around what this will cost to go and consult the community on if council resolves today to do another consultation? Is there a rough order of costs that we would expect that to be? So perhaps the same question, but looking forward rather than back.
I think it's fair. I can take that under advisement and come back to council, but it'd be in the order of $10,000 to $15,000 based on where we've got to. So, and that would be for the external support needed to help move the consultation process.
So that gives you some idea. Councillor Reddy.
Just aware, a couple of items. Obviously, the previous consultation fell over, so we're not going back again. And we're not going back with tender prices because, of course, I don't know who's going to be able to tender up until I think June 25. So we're out a little bit less of what the timeline's wrong. But we've got an item that's in public excluded that fits in with this one as well. So we're looking at doing a recommendation and then saying let's go ahead and do this now, but we're going to then discuss something in public excluded, which also sort of touches on the subject. So once again, it looks like a castle full of horse for me. Maybe others don't see it that way, but we've got a lot of public consultation going on at the moment. We've got the long-term plan coming up. We've got rates review coming up, and I've got to look at the situation here now. Where is the urgency? Can this piggyback on another public consultation process that we go through? So we park it for now and pick it up in the new year.
So I think the suggestion is that it could be consulted on as part of the long-term plan. So it would be just a significant chapter, whatever specific item we would consult on, because we're going out for that anyway in the next lot of consultation. Is that correct? Is that a possibility?
I think yes, that would most likely be our preference, but we would take guidance if that was not preferred.
So I think the previous consultation wasn't a complete, there's quite a lot of information in the report around information we gained from that around publics, what they favoured, what they didn't favour. And it's the very reason why there's multiple options here around bin sizes, for instance, seeking to try and address some of the feedback that was received. So the consultation is far from fallen over. It was completed, and the information that was gained from that has highlighted that there's a desire in the community for some more options than the one option that they had in front of them, or the status quo plus one other option. So what this paper is trying to do is seek whether council wants to do that, or whether we want to just resolve to get on with a particular option. That's largely what's in front of us. And there's clearly an option to consult in the long-term plan. Councillor Naylor.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I take issue with the comment that the consultation fell over, certainly didn't fall over. We had the consultation, we had the hearings, and we made some, and then we went into deliberations, which was cool. And it was pretty clear from those deliberations to me that the council was moving towards a certain path. We just required information, which was costing mainly. And, this decision to go back out to consultation comes as a bit of a surprise to me, because I thought in terms of what we resolved at the deliberation day was that we wanted the council to run this. We didn't want it out in the private enterprise anymore. We'd all decided that it should be council run, and all what we were looking for was in terms of user pays, if you like, or pay as you throw. So we wanted some idea of what the likely costs were and what sort of systems might be involved in terms of whether it was a tag on the bin or whatever. So we seem to be going back quite a few steps, and I thought we'd actually come to a point where today we could have made a decision one way or another. But I know I was reading the room that day, but I certainly had that impression that we just needed more information. And you'll recall we had a date set. This report wasn't going to be ready with that information, and really we've still not got that information in this report.
So forging on without a consultation is definitely an option. That is one of the things we can move today, if that's the way you feel. I guess I'm trying to tease out the key thing there is around the ability for council to run the process with a wheelie bin, with a pay-as-you-throw option. Is that largely what you're saying?
That's pretty much how the members on the day.
Yeah. So I read in the report that pay-as-you-throw tag system is an option, is available. So is there any further information you can provide today to answer the questions?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Absolutely. I mean, once you get down to the decision of which way you want to go, and we've looked at the separate that councils do, whether it's tags or RFIDs, that there's different, not all of them are perfect, and that would be, I would say, an operational matter to progress with once we get to the stage of scoping and tendering for the work. So certainly those aspects are well understood enough to then bring back to council once we have the direction what that proposal looked like, and effectively a mandate or a resolution from council to proceed with a certain option would then unlock staff to proceed to procurement phase. One of the issues we have at the moment without having a clear resolution yet is that it's problematic to approach the market with something that hasn't yet been resolved by council, because actually procurement is very clear about intent and let's say commitment to proceed. And so what we're trying to establish here is which way to proceed. It's certainly within council's purview to select a different option and go straight ahead with that without re-consultation. For example, option 2B may be the one that council decides to proceed with instead of 1B. So the full menu of options are available. Staff have made a recommendation, and obviously it's council's decision which, if any, of those to proceed with and how to proceed with them, whether it's with or without consultation.
So before we sit down, so one more question then. So we could resolve today that our preferred option, so drill down to one of these, and there'd be another step where you would come back and report back on tag RFID, a bit closer to what it would actually be operationally, and then council could resolve to authorise you to go to tender for that without a consultation.
Well, we would do that in one step. We would go to the market, we would negotiate the best solution, and essentially be in a position to come back with a tender. I mean, that would be the next.
What I'm hearing from Councillor Naylon, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm hearing that we kind of want to make a decision today, but there's a little bit of vagarity around around the operational aspect of pay as you throw if we were to go to bins. So yes, in theory it's doable, but we're not sure yet whether it is. So I'm feeling as though there needs to be still one more step before we lock in and say go to tender, because we don't want to go to tender and then find actually no one in the country does RFID reading or these tags, and Tauranga have been an absolute nightmare or whatever. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yes, so probably that's perhaps a decision as to whether that's a governance decision or an operational decision, because actually the service level is, let's say, pay as you throw, and how that's done. If government provides information back to make a decision whether it's tags or something else, absolutely, but I wouldn't see that as necessarily required, but we'll take advice.
Okay, Councillor Howard.
I'd just like to say I concur with Councillor Naylor. I think the community centre is a clear direction. I just think we need to, having that direction and narrowing it down to confirm, get some sharper prices and maybe a bit more direction. I don't think we need to go out to consultation again, except for maybe including the long-term plan consultation. Then it could be, I'm not quite sure we want it against the status quo, or maybe they've got a clear direction that's not against the targeted rate. Maybe just confirmation through the long-term plan process that now we've got some sharper prices. That is what people do want.
Mm-hmm. Councillor Fowler.
Two things if I may, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
The first one, I guess it's like a bit of hindsight looking back at this, but it would have been nice on reflection if we had all of these options to provide to the community at the start of consultation rather than now, because it seems kind of a little bit too late. Like, it would have been good for in people's submissions if they had another option, preferable option they could have chosen. But anyway, it is what it is now. And the second one, I think Mike has kind of covered, but this will be kind of the public. So scenario 3, reconsult with the community, recommended options using tender prices, not recommended. Could you just give me a little bit more information why it's not recommended to use the tender prices?
Thank you through the chair. It's the issue is actually how council would approach the market. So the contractors that we would go to, if we're asking the market for tendered pricing, as in a full procurement process, there has to be intent and good faith of council to be able to enter into that. So the difficulty or the problem for council is that without a resolution to say that's the way we're doing it, it's certainly a problem that staff aren't comfortable with in terms of going to a market and saying, we think we're going to do this subject to a resolution of council. That's not considered in staff's view a reasonable way to approach the market. So the alternative is that we can use the information and metrics and data that we have to give our best estimate of the prices for each of the options, which is really probably the key thing, is the differentiation between the options based on price, noting it's not a firm price here, as a way to help guide decision making. So you can get orders of magnitude difference between one option and another. So it's actually a procurement issue more than an intent.
Can I answer your question?
Yeah.
Is that a hand up, Councillor Reedy, or no?
Okay, sorry, Mr. Mayor, but I hear what Graham's saying. Now, when we had the original consultation a little while back, the idea was that we would extend, had to extend at the moment smart environmental until about sometime in 25, because we were looking at a regional plan for rubbish. What I'm hearing now is, oh, let's come and do this now. The whole idea was that we were looking at a regional plan to say, and we needed something in the interim. I don't remember us sitting around and saying, we want BDC, we want this whole thing to come in-house. Sorry, I don't remember hearing that, because the original plan, as I say, through Tonkin Taylor, was a regional plan, that's firstly. Secondly, if we say, oh, let's bring it into in-house, where are the costings for that? The first thing we're going to do is go out and purchase dump trucks, $200,000. Then we're going to bring in staff and what sort of stuff. How many dump trucks do we have? We haven't even looked at anything like that, and yet here I'm saying, sorry, Graham, that we agree that we bring it in the house. We don't have costings to bring it in the house, and we didn't discuss that. I'm sorry, unless I fell asleep during that period. We were talking about, as I say, Tonkin Taylor regional plan.
Okay, I'll go to Councillor Grafton.
And to extend on that, and what Graham said as well, is where if we're going to make a decision on here on pay as you throw, again, we have no idea on costing. So how much of the public they might have said pay as you throw, and if we're not going to go out and consult, and it's pay as you throw might be 20% dearer, public probably are going to say, maybe mandatory sounds better now.
Councillor Naylor?
And that was the reason why we asked for that information. We needed that information before we could make a decision. And that's what Councillor Reggie's saying. In-house doesn't mean we're going to buy dump trucks. We're simply going to run the contractor, if you like. So we'll hire the contractor, as opposed to going out to the market and leaving everything up to the private sector, which is basically what Smart Environmental's doing at the moment. And I think too, we're not looking to make a decision today to get this up and running. There was always a big long lead-in time. We were never going to have a system up and running before the existing contract came to an end. So we always had to extend the other contract.
Councillor O'Keefe?
Yeah, I agree with Graham. We were meant to have the tag, the codes, the pool rising on that for pay as you throw. Plus, I think I remember rightly and then we were breaking it down from that. Then Graham broke it down to true transport as well, the dump costs to Nelson opposed to Grey, all that sort of stuff.
Executive?
I'm just going to say, I don't actually think there's a real haste in this. When you look at just the broad summary, 73% opposed the change when the consultation went out. So I don't think there's an urgent need to be purchasing bins now online on trade or anything. We've obviously got the time to think a bit more about, as they've all said, more detail, because we're going to have to extend the contract anyway. The content of the consultation led most people to say they didn't want to change. So maybe we do need to reconsult that with some firmer options. But I'm saying there's no mandate here from the public to say we've got to do this tomorrow.
CEO?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll try and help us move forward, because I think you're all right. That what we didn't quite do is put in all of the proposals that are listed here in the initial consultation. If you recall the consultation material, it was on one option. We got incredible feedback from the community that option wasn't palatable to approximately 70-odd%. And so as a result of that prompted staff to go away and have a look at what are the alternative options in order to address or to reflect the community's feedback. And I guess what our team are today putting forward to you is, in doing that reflection, we now have clearer options based on that initial consultation. We are going into a long-term plan process, and certainly with each of these options now we're clearer on what they are. We can then start to put realistic costs around each of those options, and using either the long-term plan process or the annual plan process the following year, we can actually go out and properly consult with the community on the cost of each of the options and get their detailed feedback on the right one way to go about this. And so what I'm hearing is that there is a desire for change. there is a reluctance to spend a lot more money reconsulting, but the fact is we actually haven't properly consulted with the community on these range of options yet. And the team are asking today for your confirmation to go forward with these options, utilising the long-term plan to then put that in front of the community with the costings that we can get together. And really your recommendations are to give us the direction that you agree around the preferred mix of options and moving forward with recommendation 3, and that gives us the direction as to how we then write into the long-term plan. So that's kind of how I'm seeing it pan out, which then enables us to keep this moving, doesn't lock us in without talking with the community again about what the real costs of pay-as-you-throw of a council versus private system. It gives us that ability to really test those options. I am just looking at Mr. Duff to make sure that I've summarised the intent correctly, Mike.
Thank you. And correct, agree. I would also add, just for further context and awareness for councillors, so the things running parallel to this, it's been noted, there's a reporting in public excluded section about the current contract, and that's hand in glove with this, because the councillors who mentioned about timeframe are correct. The expiry will happen before any of the options are able to be implemented. So that essentially buys the time. And my advice is we should take our time, because actually these are important, significant decisions for communities affected. And I also wanted to point out, in terms of what have we done with respect to the LTP budgets, because this is all playing out in parallel. What we've assumed in our LTP budgets today is that the current status quo will continue with an, what you might say, escalation uplift. So that's closest to option 1A in your table, is currently what we have included in our budgets. And what we would have been exposed to in terms of the numbers. So just for clarity, what we've got in our LTP budgets is essentially the status quo, and the uplifted version of that to recognise cost increases going forward. So in addition to Mr. Gilman's comments, just those thoughts.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. I think that sums it up quite good. And I think I am going to test the room, and I'll move A through D as the recommendations, noting that there's that next level of consultation to happen, and that is buying us the time to have that detail in front of the community and lock in a contract as best as we can. It's going to be a 10-year contract. So I'm moving A through D. Is there a seconder? Councillor Naylon. Is there anyone?
Can you please explain what you mean by lock-ins for 10 years?
Well, the current contract that we've been running with has been a 10-year contract. So what I'm meaning is that these long-run contracts are worth spending some time up front and getting them right and making sure it's what everyone is going to work for as many people as we can. So that's what I mean by that, yeah. I don't know what the length of the contract will be this time, but I know the current one has been quite a long-term affair.
And just if we had some input into the consultation, what we're trying to achieve here, and what information we think the public will require.
Yep. So just looking at scenario 2 regards consultation, does that specifically speak to the long-term plan, or are we leaving what? Because I think I'm more comfortable doing it as part of the long-term plan because we're consulting anyway. So are we clear that's what we intend?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and that could be added to the recommendation of the resolution that staff will be comfortable with.
Yep. So if C was to read, approve scenario 2 as the recommended process to reconsult with the community based on estimated costs, not tender prices, to be included in the long-term plan consultation 2024-34. which is the upcoming long-term plan. Happy with that, seconder? Yep. Okay, moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion?
Just following on from what Councillor Bash said before, 73% of people voted against and didn't really want change. Would it be worth including the status quo of what we currently do in the consultation?
I think we always do.
We do?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Councillor Sam, oh, sorry.
No, sorry, just to confirm, council confirms the consultation material in the document, so you have ultimate sign off on what goes out to the community in March next year.
Yeah.
Councillor Sampson's next.
Well, I think, the number of those opposed, and I think the thread was clear of what people really wanted. And you had your workshop that I wasn't here at, with bringing that together, that we should be able to make a decision rather than go round in circles. But I have grave fear that if we go out with the LTP, because this was a fairly solid consultation, that will overtake our LTP, and we won't get fair consultation, because that's always a risk if you go out with a fairly dominant issue, that it overtakes the whole essence of an overarching LTP, and it just singles out. And that's my concern if we include it with the LTP. And as I said earlier, I'm opposed to going to consultation again, and more so going with including it in the LTP for that reason.
Okay. So I think you should stay and I'll come back.
Just on the, given the conversation, I just wondered, D needs to be reworded, because I think the feeling on the table is that we actually wanted the public consultation process and document to come back to council for approval rather than delegating it.
Yep. So if we delete the words through until approve, and we just say the public consultation process and documentation in relation to the recommendations above are to be brought back to council.
Which we would do as part of the long-term plan consultation document, so if it's included in that, that would be just part of the normal process.
Yep. Okay. Oh, sorry, for Councillor Grafton.
So you talked about 10-year contract there before. Where in the process of this does that come in? Because I thought we were only looking to get through to June 25.
So I apologise if I clouded the water in that comment. It was a throwaway comment. It wasn't based on any negotiations or anything. It was that the current process we've got with Smart Environmental has been in place for circa 10 years. So what I'm saying is when we go to the market, this whole new process of waste collection will likely be a long-term contract, because the contractors need to buy equipment and tool up for it. So we don't want to go out with something and then 2 years in think, oh, this isn't working for our community, and we want to tweak it and change it, because there'll be a whole lot of ramifications around contract with that. So that's what I was getting, was my anecdote was that it's worth putting in some time up front now to make sure that we test all these different ideas and be as solid as we can on our decision making, because these are long-term type contracts once they go out to the market. Apologies if I confused the matter by using that. Councillor Weston.
Yeah, I'm still not comfortable with the fact that we need to reconcile with 73% of people said, that's all we should have. So, sorry. I'm sort of a bit dubious about this reconciling.
So the reason to the need for reconsulting, councillor, is that we never consulted on these options in the first place, and that is material to the Local Government Act. And also, you can think about, we will be setting fees and charges on a number of these options, which can only be struck through the Local Government Act process, which is done through consultation. So yes, in hindsight, would have been great if we had these options in at the front end, but the feedback we got from the community recommended that these are options that are really viable and valued by the community. So I think that's the reason why.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. It may be that when we're going out for consultation, is the long-term vision is that the bags are on their way out anyway, given that they're out in a lot of other communities. You know, is the status quo actually a long-term viable option, or is it not? Because if it's not, then we need to be open about that as well. You know, because we may be only delaying something that it's imposed. So if it's going to be imposed, then wouldn't it be good to have some sort of decent say of what is the best alternative?
Councillor, oh, sorry, have you got something to add to that?
Just in response to what Mr. Mayor said, a very good point. So, yes, what we see in the market in the sector is a move away from bags. So what we've done here with respect to the other public excluded is recognise that we may have to go another year or so to get us to the point where we've now got a direction and a way forward for the future. But the future more looks like bins than it does bags. And so hence, if council resolve to choose one thing without further consultation, we have recommended 1B, which is the contractor basically moves to bins, not bags. But that has a different, a different cost structure, different considerations. So, yes, the sector's going away from bags.
Last word, Councillor Naylor.
A little bit of concern. I'm hearing this 73% of people that were consulted, or people that consulted were a small proportion of the district, and councillors have to put their own weight, as I said at the hearings, on what you've heard in submission. But when you took your oath, it was in the best interest of the Buller district. And so you have to try and take into account all of those people who didn't submit. And we heard from some submitters who said, well, that's tough shit. They didn't submit, you've got to listen to us. Well, it doesn't quite work like that in the real world. And I guess in terms of bags versus bins, the main issue was user pay. And people from the hearings, we had people who said, we're quite happy to go to bins and away from bags, but as long as bins are user paid, because in the system we've got at the moment, bags means user pays, and that was the main theme that we got from everybody. That's the unfairness. We can't go to a ratepayer scheme like we do with the recycling, because it's not fair. You need to pay for lots of reasons. And so I think, the message I got was we can go to bins, but they have to be used pays, and how do we do that? And I guess it's mentioned in the report that if you're a contractor and you're going user pays, you don't have really any idea each fortnight of how many bins you're going to pick up. And so you've got to price that accordingly. So you're going to put a premium on your contract price to, because if you go out and only get 6 bins for the day, you're going to be down the good. Whereas the ratepayer paying scheme, actually you're guaranteed a price regardless whether there's 6 bins picked up. And so you can actually hopefully ratchet your tender price down. And so those are the sorts of things that I think we've got to understand as councillors. If we can get that message out to the public in the consultation, and so they can understand it, then they might see, what direction we need to go.
Yep.
Last week.
Thank you. So with that, I'll put it to the vote, A, B, C, and D, with those couple of minor amendments, that it to be included in the long-term plan, and that the consultation documentation will be approved by council, most likely via the long-term plan consultation approval stuff. All those in favour? Any against? There's 3 against. Simpson, Reedy against. The motion's carried. Thank you very much for good questions on that.
Just to have a final note, in all of that, those recommendations, there wasn't anything to have a base rate with for X number, and that sort of gives them security and tax. So a base and tax. That when
I don't understand your question.
A base rate, that everybody pays a rate, but it's a lower rate. And after a dozen collections, you get a tag. So it's a base plus purchase of tags, like you used to do with the bags, that everybody paid for 50 odd bags a year. And if you use
I see what you're saying.
yeah.
So a targeted rate and a user pay rate. Let's complicated.
It's kind of a, management.
Yeah, it's been passed. You should have raised it earlier.
Well, as no, that was seen it went through as an additional option.
Okay. Agenda item 6, moving on, thanks, is the Town Plaza project. Another one from, if you want to talk us through this paper, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The paper is, I'll take as read, it's a checkpoint actually back to council with this project. The next stage, stage 1 was completed in a previous cycle and was really the placeholder, the temporary works, if you will. And this particular next stage is funded from our current annual plan, but it's just prudent to check back with council that this is still the direction to proceed, and essentially that's the resolution staff seeking. Any questions?
Okay, so can I just ask a question for absolute clarity? So this is included in, this has already been rated for effectively this year, and so has no impact on rates going forward.
So I can answer a part of that to say it's been budgeted for this annual plan year, and it's actually the conclusion of the LTP training of the 21-24 LTP. As to matter of rates, I might need some guidance from our CFO because that will depend on how it's to be funded, whether it's loan funded and such. So I suppose if this particular project was stopped, whilst it's in the budget, it doesn't necessarily mean that in and how it's been treated, whether the rates equation changes or not. Perhaps we take that on advisement, or if Mr. Marshall knows the answer to that today.
So I guess before you answer that, I'll probably extend the question slightly and say, so we consulted on a long-term plan last training, and in that long-term plan was a 3-year revitalisation fund, which was endorsed and approved by the community, presumably funded. There was a funding plan within that plan. So I guess what I'm trying to understand is if we were cancelling it now, what is that? Does that mean that money can be transferred to some other project? Or, so I think that's the questions we're going to be asking the community if we were to carry on with this is, well, why didn't you use this money for X, or given us a rate cut, or
just to, I suppose, trying to be diplomatic, it's, as the report as I read it, it's coming for an update on where it's at, and we're not committed to any contracts as use in terms of construction and that sort of thing. And I do think it's a prudent point. We are into a bit of a challenging time at the moment in council budgets. So it could be one that we do look at and go, well, how does it now sit? I understand it's in the LGP, I understand people are committed to that and it's been consulted on, but there's everything in the LGP. But you know, when you've got a few challenges, everything also needs to be up for grab to have a look at. So I would just suggest Mr. Duff and I over the next few months will just be carefully working through and understanding what it is we're committing ourselves to, and just making sure that the discussion with the council before that contract that this is the best thing for that scheme. So I just think that's financial, just a position we take.
Councillor Sampson?
There's probably 2 questions. Yes, we did consult on it, and I think it was a loan to be taken out, and I'd like to know the difference in the loan, because we're talking 5 years ago. This plan came out in 2018, 5 years ago, and the climate was completely different. We were quite buoyant at that time. Now we're not. So the interest rates alone will mean that we're going to be paying substantially more back, even as a loan. And I don't see that we should be going ahead. There was a bit of controversy about the plan at the time when it was consulted. Now they're going to go back and consult it, and that was, 2018 this plan was put together. So I think in the present climate and the fact that we were in more of a buoyant position then, I think it's not particularly wise to go ahead with it.
Okay. Councillor Reedy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In terms of what Rose was saying, it's actually, it wasn't the 18, it's the 21, basically, where we are the last long-term plan. And I hear where Douglas and both Douglas and Mike are coming from. We haven't expended the money yet, so we haven't spent any money, we haven't taken out a loan. Loan at the moment, $300,000 roughly at 5%, so you're looking around about 15, 16 grand a year in interest. Now, at the moment, we have some serious issues in terms of rates increases. Perception out there now, we're going to go and do a beautification, revitalisation in the quarter, and people are going to start saying, where's your priorities? Okay, so all I'm asking is, I'm not saying we dump it, but at the end of year 5, year 4, year 5, year 6, the LTP, and we simply acknowledge that we cannot undertake this for this financial year, and that we put it into, given the struggles we're having at the moment, that we put it at least, recognise the fact that it's there, and put it into, as I said before, LTP 4 or 5.
Mm-hmm. So it'll be like a defer strategy.
Defer, please.
Okay. Anyone, Councillor Ruffin?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, if it's not outside funding, 330,000 or whatever, we are sitting around the table trying to look at rates and that, and I mean, there's just no way. How do you justify that? And let's cut some road in or something, water infrastructure. I mean, it just makes no sense to me.
Councillor Weston?
Yeah, I think on the way in here, there's some like and see, what are you doing this for? So, it's out there.
Councillor Howard?
I think some of the temporary works looks quite good and it almost looks like permanent, but I'm just wondering whether the stormwater upgrade in that area, a little bit of funding may be needed to tidy up or landscape around whatever earthworks are being done.
Yeah, that is a question. So there is, I understand that's where the brick arch work is roughly. Stormwater work, which is going to happen underneath the road, round about there. Is there implications of that we need to consider?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So there is pipe work under that area that is a separate project. And it's been made clear that project must self-fund its own rehabilitation and reinstatement. So that's not conditional. There was opportunity if both were to proceed, but it's not conditional or material if this project doesn't proceed to that stormwater area that will just happen anyway. It's scheduled for February, March, so that will proceed, and you're not even holding for this, which is the natural timetable of things which presented the opportunity to bring this back to council for.
Okay. Councillor Howard?
Just a supplementary one. Should we be talking with the neighbouring businesses and the people that use that area just to say, like, how's this temporary one impacting them? Are they quite happy with that to continue, or are there some aspects of that they feel that need to be addressed?
Okay, I'm going to, if there's no other questions, I'm going to suggest a different recommendation, and we work on this maybe, but a request staff to defer the Westport Town Plaza project stage 2 until year 4 of the long-term plan, or to include, do we want to be as specific as that, or to take a defer approach to including it in the next long-term plan? So whether it's 3, 4, 5, it's probably an operational.
Could be less external funding. Less funding external.
But I don't think we need to cloud that. I think that as long as it's in our LTP, we can probably pull it out as a application. I'm not sure. Anything to add on that point?
No, look, I think we're taking the tenor of the room and that progressing at this time in the context of what we're about to go into around a long-term plan discussion, I think is wise to bring it into that process. And the choice for you to either bring it into the first 3 years of the LTP or into years 4 to 10, I think the mood in the room is to defer it to year 4. But it is still subject to consultation, and the community can give you feedback to bring it forward, subject to all the other matters that we need to deal with. So I think if we've got it right, request staff to defer the Westport Town project, Plaza project stage 2 until year 4 of the long-term plan.
May I just say this, Mr. Mayor, I like your comment, instead of actually defining a year to have it deferred till, I can't remember your words now, but they didn't tie us to a specific year, but it's on the program.
Yeah.
That's all, so I actually for your Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, so we were, yep, so to that end and saying until to be included in a defer strategy of the long-term plan, or words to that effect. Is that right? Yeah.
I think that's good, but can we just get defer from the 21-30-31 long-term plan, certainly reprogrammed in the 24-34 long-term plan, just as shown there, moving between those two periods.
Okay.
And then, as the Chief Executive said, still subject to consultation process, for 34 we'll be planning a physically similar.
Yeah. Okay.
I suppose one question would be the number of main comment about whether the budget and what the years ago. Do we need to review the budget? Because I suppose one of the things might be that we've got an amount, but we've got to look at it, it's going to be a different figure. And so therefore probably as part of that for a process, we do need to update, and it can be at a reasonably high level that re-advises them. Probably you don't need to submit it, and just need to acknowledge we will need to go out. And so it might just, these are just numbers, might be 900,000 now, but it could be 1.3 or 4 million you take it out.
Yeah.
Another 5 years time, so we just need to be mindful of that actually. I'm not saying do it early, but I'm just saying to do the period, you just need to acknowledge we've got another cost like this.
I'm just getting a bit hung up on the wording because I'm not sure. I think I'm trying to say defer because I think it's a project we don't want to lose sight of because it's part of a bigger scheme of things that was worked on. But it feels like we're going to be just reconsulting on it in the next long-term plan. So I'm wondering, is it the reality, what I'm trying to achieve, not achievable?
Well, no, with respect, doesn't matter what you move around, it's always going to be consultable because you do have things that are in the 21-31 year that are in years 4 to 10.
Yep.
They suddenly go to 1 to 3 with the 20 is still consultable too. So
yep.
It's just one of those issues about that 10-year program.
Okay. Councillor Eadie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I understand about the consultation process, but I think everyone knows essentially we do 10 years, but the focus is on the first 3 years. So all I'm suggesting, I think, as Mr. Mayor, is that we just bump that out to a year past year 3, so it's not having a great impact on the first 3 years of our rating process.
Yeah. So let's just say year 4 or later. So we request staff to defer the Westport Town Plaza project stage 2 until year 4 or later of the 2024-34 long-term plan.
Did you want to put the from 2021? Yep.
Oh, I think actually the mayor's one's okay.
The mayor's one's okay.
So we all understand what we're doing. We're deferring it to year 4 or later of the next long-term plan, and that'll be part of the consultation. If we hear loudly that they want it sooner, then we can revisit it. Councillor.
Apologies, Mayor.
Okay, so moved Councillor Reedy to receive the report and the recommendation as read out. Seconded Deputy Mayor Basher. Everyone clear what we're doing? Mr. Naylor?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to speak against the motion. I've just recently, and along with you, attended some meetings for the outlying areas of the Ngakawau ward. Springs Junction, Maruia, and Ngakawau, and Nikamatua. And there's lots of projects out there that those residents would like done. And as you heard on last week, there's a lot of rates collected in those areas, and everything seems to be in Westport. What's the view of the ratepayers that fronted up to some of those meetings. And so, for 331K of work to be further done in Westport, where Westport has everything, according to people in Nikamatua, a bit of a slap in the face for the outlying areas. What we've decided in Reefton with Reefton Inc., etc., is that we weren't going to apply for any revitalisation money because we feel it's the turn of Ngakawau, Springs Junction, Maruia, and Nikamatua. And I'm opposed to this even being considered as a long-term plan ahead of those areas.
I'm presuming, though, there will be other things in the long-term plan for those areas, because we don't have visibility on those, do we?
Well, I guess this is part of the reasons why when you don't consult on your annual plan, you don't hear from these things, at the beginning of the year or this time last year.
Okay, noted. Any other comments? It's been moved and seconded. All those in favour? Any against?
My apologies, Mr. Mayor, I'm in favour.
Thank you. I'm sorry, those against was Councillor Naylon and Councillor Webb. Okay, the motion is carried. Thank you. Good discussion, councillors. Good points all round, actually. Right. Proposed council meeting schedule. Is that what we're up to? Agenda item 7. Now, I just want to preface this by saying I am working on some potentially, I just want to flag that that this will unlikely to be, or I certainly would like to have a conversation with council in the new year around quite a different setup for committees and structures, which will have a major change to our calendar. So although this is the calendar we adopt today, don't hang your hat on that being don't book your holidays around it late into next year anyway. So I think rely on it for the first couple of months of the new year would be my advice. But again, that's pending what decisions the council ends up making on my recommendations in the new year. But just wanted to say that there is work going on in the background that is just not quite ready to come to you for consideration yet. But sort of be disingenuous to have this discussion without flagging that. So, Chris, do you want to speak to the paper as it's written?
Just taking on feedback from the councillors in October, there's a proposal for the schedule for next year for meetings. With Mr. Bay said it may change next year, but this is just taking on feedback and presenting a schedule for you to adopt if you wish today.
Move it, Mr. Mayor.
Question, moved, Basher. Yep. You got a question, Grant, or are you seconding?
As I've raised in previous years, I'm more than happy to have more than one meeting in a day, and I'd rather have less days of meetings than, and obviously this is going to have workshops and everything else like thrown in as well. So I've got no issue, like today we'll have, by the time we finish up, probably excluded 5 meetings today. So, just having 1 meeting, 3 meetings a month.
Okay. Just a question. I know it was inferred at the LTP workshop. I think we were going to be definitely having a workshop in January, which isn't on here at all. I just thought it'd be nice if we had January and February reasonably tight.
Look, I can take that one, Mr. Mayor. Look, I think that is almost to a degree subject to the following paper, is around the management and delivery of our workshops based on the Open for Business report from the Ombudsman. Our intent will be as quickly as we can, subject to that decision, that we then start to publicly address all of the workshops and meetings that you hold, and we will certainly focus on late January and February and early March, leading into the long-term plan adoption based on the current structure of committees.
Okay, Councillor Allen.
Oh yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. This is a bit of a Clayton's schedule as far as I'm concerned. It doesn't have any of the the numerous workshops that we're required to attend. So I'd like to move that we just defer this until we get a proper schedule with everything on it. You can't plan your life around this.
Chrissy, Ms. Trigg.
I, through the chair, just suggest that we don't know all of the dates of the workshops, and there's new workshops that come throughout the year, so quite happy to take a recommendation if you wish for the workshops to be held on a specific day or before a specific meeting, and we can try and plan those in regarding that.
CEO.
Yeah, look, to that point, I take what you're saying, councillor. However, we've got statutory obligations to notify both the Ngakawau Community Board and the Risk and Audit Committee in February, and given a big chunk of us and you will be going away and setting your plans, I would recommend you do adopt this schedule on the basis it does give us that platform to at least market and promote those events and those meetings. Noting that we will come back, again, subject to the next paper, with a more fuller version early in the new year. We just do need to get those first couple of formal meetings at least agreed to in time, acknowledging that the rest of the calendar could change substantially, and we will fill it in with more detail. And take your point on board.
So shall we just note, what shall we just call it then, and say that there needs to be a workshop on the final Wednesday of January? Put it in the calendar.
We can certainly move that way. Yeah.
So let's do that. 31st.
Just in response to Chrissy's comment about workshops, it would be best to do on Wednesdays in the future, all Wednesdays, and I totally understand where Councillor Weston's coming from about not having too many days, but realistically, if the rec day is rec meeting and workshops, council was council day and workshops, and they can kind of be on those days, that will hopefully help.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's largely the proposal that I'm going to be bringing through in the new year with a few other changes, but yeah, so I think Wednesday's that day. So if we could focus on January and February, and we lock in a workshop, pencil a workshop on the 31st, which is the last Wednesday in January, and then we just have that ICB on the 13th and then RAC on the 14th, noting that there's likely to be some workshops or something on that RAC day, and similarly for council on the 28th of February. We could just adopt to that at the moment, then would that give everyone enough time?
Good.
So just January and February?
No.
Okay, I'll move that way. Oh, you've already moved it, Angela. Andrew?
Well, I'm happy to unmove.
Sorry, so you moved it. Do you want to move it?
I'm happy to move it.
Yeah.
I'm not selfish.
I'll second it. So all those in favour? Any against? One against, so the motion's carried. So that's just locked in January, February dates. The rest of it, I promise you will have something in front of you to discuss probably on the 31st of January, and then we'll be able to confirm it formally, whatever changes we do choose to make in February. That sound fair? Cool. Agenda item 8 is the Ombudsman Open for Business report. This is around opening up our workshops, following the Ombudsman's advice, recommendations. Let's take this one as read. Are there any questions? Just want to pick the pace up a bit because we are a bit on councillor ready.
Just the recommendation 2.2 on page, whatever it is.
Yeah.
None of these changes agreed or incorporated with council standing orders. Or standing orders have to be agreed by 75% of the. So this just says that we incorporated. We need to just elaborate a bit further, and then I'll report back to council for notification or whatever. Yes. Otherwise, I'm happy.
Yep, so two is just to read standing orders early 2024 for council approval. Yeah. Okay, any questions on this? I think it's a very good step. So you've moved, Councillor Naylor. Anything? I thought you would agree to do something. No? Okay, is there anyone to second the piece? Councillor Weston seconded, moved and seconded. I'll open it up for conversation, question, comment.
You'll recall that I wasn't happy at the CES meeting about the process that we used in terms of looking at those applications, and from what I read in the paper the next day, I think I was a bit misconstrued in what I was trying to get across to you, because it said that I was unhappy, or that I had an opportunity to comment on certain applications, what should have been improved and what shouldn't have. But of course, the thrust of my whole concern was about the way we went about it. And if you read the report on page 111, it says the councils must ensure that their processes leave no room for perceptions to develop that decisions are being made in workshops, or that workshops are being used to debate out issues to the extent that a decision has been made in all but name and just need to be rubber stamped in the council meeting. And I just want to clarify to everybody that that's the concern I had. It wasn't about particular applications or a chance to talk about them. My concern wasn't, I I mentioned that it was wrong the way we've gone about it, and it's good to see that the Auditor General has actually backed up my concern, if you like.
Excellent. Councillor Reading.
Mr Mayor, I disagree with the councillor's comments. We always agreed that everything in the workshop would not be voted on. We came forward with the recommendations, that's all. We just simply discussed, all those recommendations could have been discussed at the time. As far as the Ombudsman is concerned, not the OAG is concerned, that's always been out there, and we've always had that understanding even before I was elected. Workshops are for workshop only and not decision making.
Yep.
So I'm happy with my original.
Yep, no, cool. And this is clearly an additional step in saying that they're now actually going to be open, advertised, and live streamed. So it's another step in the right direction in terms of including the public in decision making and both sides of that coin, in the sense that they also get a greater understanding of the challenges that councils face, as well as when they're applying for money from us, for instance, they may have a better concept or context of why that's sometimes problematic for council. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded that council receive the report for information and resolve to fully implement the Chief Ombudsman recommendations as identified under clause 3.4 of this report, and note that these changes, if agreed, will be incorporated into council's standing orders in early 2024 and presented back to council for approval. As standing orders have to be. Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favour? Any against? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, keeping of animals bylaw. This one has been around. It's been through Councillor Naylon's committee and some changes there. How do we want to handle this, Mr. Naylon? Do you want to hear from Bronwyn? Okay. Do we need to hear? Bronwyn, do you want to speak to your report?
So through you, Chair, this report is a summation of the deliberations that happened at the second hearing. Were basically the bylaw as it was proposed during that second phase of consultation was generally given support. There was one issue that was still remains somewhat unclear. And that was regarding whether or not the 2-cat rule should apply to every house or every property. At the moment, the definition is around property, and property means a parcel of land. Parcel of land is basically a rateable unit, something like that. That's how it will be interpreted legally. It's a parcel of land, it's a legal definition. And there were submissions regarding whether or not this was unfair on properties on parcels of land that have more than one house. And that could be everything from a granny flat to a holiday park. The question was raised regarding could we go away and look at some other options. At the moment, the bylaw is it's worded in that if you wanted to have more than 2 cats per property, you would make an application to council. Just at the outset, that is still, as officers, that's still our recommendation. Because I'm personally having trouble finding a good definition for anything other than property and dwelling house. The one that we have was the one that the lawyers endorsed. It related to our dwelling house definition, related to the fact that it was more about the neighbouring dwelling house. So if you had poultry, you could only be X number of metres from the dwelling house next door. So that's why it's so wide, and that it includes all sorts of things like tents. So our current dwelling means any separately occupied household unit used in part or whole, and includes any building, tent, vehicle, or other structure, whether permanent or temporary, and whether attached to the soil or not. So that is a good definition for sort of in the negative, to keep the effects, the nuisance of, say, poultry, pigs, or other animals next to a dwelling house. So it's however, it doesn't work particularly well if we were going to use that to say 2 cats per dwelling, and use this definition, because I don't, it doesn't lend itself to 2 cats per tent, vehicle, or other structure, whether permanent or temporary. Other councils use words such as premises. They use household but don't define it. They use on Paris North, for example, says no person may keep more than 3 cats per dwelling on any private land. A dwelling in their definition is a dwelling unit. There's no more definition than that. In New Plymouth, a dwelling or a dwelling house is the same definition as we've got, but they have used it for the maximum number of cats. So our response is that to the questions that were raised, I think, Sean, you agree with this, that the exception rule will work quite well, rather than complicating with another term that we would have to put in the definition. And I don't think that the intention would be that there were 2 cats in every tent, in every camper van, even in the situation of a holiday camp. I don't think that would be the intention. It would be something that you would particularly see there would be nuisance caused by that. So I think the answer from our point of view is to rely on the exemption, the application, make it a very simple application form and application process, and then just work it in a common sense way from there.
Thank you. So that clarified that question quite well, I think, in terms of the definition. Any other questions on the rest of the paper? Councillor Farr.
Sorry, I should have emailed this in advance, but I didn't. Was there ever a number of poultry in the household? Because I thought
Yes,
the number 6 was floated around, but I couldn't see it in this.
I think it's 12.
Does it
Yeah,
say?
8.2, it says 12.
8.2, yeah.
Doing me 8.2 chickens.
No, it's a people that accept more than 12 head of poultry on any property in an open area.
Cool, thank you.
Councillor Naylor?
Yes, the other matter of contention, I guess, following the hearings and the deliberations was the de-sexing and the number of months old the cat was to be. And I see we've following our vote that we had on that day that it is 6 months, but I will reiterate that we were advised by the SPCA and I think Forest and Bird that 4 months was more of a suitable age, but I'm happy to go with 6 months, given that the local vets aren't going to do them under 6 months, so not much point in putting it in. But I will say that I think I mentioned at the hearing that there's a bill before the select committee, could become an act of parliament at some stage, and it may drop down to 4 months there, but happy for it to run 6 months.
It's not in the 100 days. Probably not. Any other questions on the bylaw? Okay, so let's work through them, and because it is through legal. So I shall move that council determines that in accordance with section 155 of the Local Government Act 2002, the council is satisfied the Keeping of Animals Bylaw 2023 A is the most appropriate way of addressing the perceived problems, B is the most appropriate form of bylaw, and C does not give rise to any implications under the New Zealand Bill of Rights Act 1990. 2, determines that it has followed the required special consultative procedure as set out in Local Government Act 2002. 3, adopts the Keeping of Animal Bylaw 2023 as attached in attachment 1. 4, approves the commencement date of 20 December 2023. 5, revokes the existing Buller District Council Keeping of Animals Bylaw on 20 December 2023. And 6, thanks all those members of the community and organisations who made submissions to the draft bylaw. I move that way. Is there a seconder? Seconded, Councillor Naylor. No further debate. All those in favour? Any against? I have a fair bit of time for questions at the start. The motion's carried. Thank you.
Yeah, first, I thought it was, my apologies, I thought once it had been seconded, it was open for discussion.
Well, it was, but you were too slow. Okay, adoption of Section 10A Dog Control Act, agenda item 11. This is an annual report that comes to council as part of our obligations under the Dog Control Act. Mr. Judd, do you have anything to add to the report?
No, I don't. Actually, it's statistical information. There's the last year's comparison just for interest, but no, I think we can take it through. Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions on the paper?
I'll move this new.
Councillor Naylor. Any questions, Councillor Reedy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Only 2 questions. We've got a policy and a bylaw. When they're both up for review, do we have it on the timetable at some stage for them to be reviewed? I've had a look at the dates. I'm just asking the question. It's not a biggie.
Yep, Bronwyn.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the bylaw was reviewed in the major review in 2020, which said that yes, it's been reviewed, but we will be making changes in terms of amendments. So the amendments to the bylaw and the dog policy at the same time will be happening, and they are definitely up there on the schedule. We have a meeting on next Wednesday, and we will be looking at that time frame, and it's probably something that will come through to council as well.
Cool, thank you. Were you seconding?
I'll second.
Okay, so it's been moved, Nail on that council adopts the Buller District Council annual report on dog control policy and practices for the 2022-2023 financial year. Seconded, Deputy Mayor Basher. All those in favour? Any against? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, Mayor's report. It's quite a brief report because it's only been a couple of weeks since you last heard from me. So I'll quickly give that quick verbal update on those three that were pending when I penned the report. Ikamatua, great turnout, and joined by Councillor Naylon, who largely ran the session really, or certainly answered and had a lot of local knowledge around the specific corners and bits of grass and trees that were the community were concerned about, and obviously got a few follow-up notes and things of things to see if they're in the work plan or service request type things. Clear feedback from the community that one of the key projects they see as important for that part of our district is a public toilet, or certainly one that's open and accessible 24/7. So that's a work on that the community are going to work on through our usual iteration of plans and processes to get that over the line. The TTPP committee met this week on Monday or Tuesday. It didn't end up being a meeting because they didn't have a physical quorum, so it was just a workshop. So it was really just a project update, not a lot to add there, I don't think. There's some financials that are still being tidied up with internal processes at regional council that'll come back to the next formal meeting in the new year. And the LGNZ special general meeting was held on Monday afternoon, I believe, and that was to vote on the consensus document that LGNZ had worked up with regards to the future for local government reform. And all 5 sections of that passed with quite solid majority. I think the lowest one was 78% or something like that. Most of the others were 80 or 90, in the 80s, high 80s, 90%. So that was quite a sort of drawn out process, but a way of building a consensus from what was a large sort of spread of opinion across the territorial authorities across New Zealand, and to drill that down into a reasonably high degree of support. Was quite a good piece of work by LGNZ, I believe. I don't have anything else. There's a couple of matters in correspondence that I think I will be seeking perhaps an update on from staff, and then consideration around replies. The first of which would be the Railway Museum, the letter regarding steam locomotive C2, which is sitting over in the old railway yard over by the Wholesome Wharf. Do we have any information on that?
I met with that group before they disbanded, when they were about to take down that building. They're relocating all those machines, and they expressed quite their wish for it to remain in that area. They indicated to me that it had been well sort of reserved in the bodywork and that, and it's got a, I think they would like, the shelter, a bit more shelter around it, but they felt quite comfortable that it being in that position, because I'd asked them about salt water, and everything like that, or other ways of protecting other than a solid building. And I think their desire is really to keep it within the district.
Okay, can I just, before I go to you, Colin, can I get some staff input on, because I think we had some sort of conversations with the Preservation Society when that building, the old goods sheds, was knocked over. What was the setup?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the discussions that council started had with the Preservation Society, the Westport group, was really around a sense of what could be done with that asset locally, and preservation and so forth, but it's a matter of funding as far as that volunteer group is concerned. I also note there was a discussion, or let's say a disagreement about ownership of the asset, and the that's expressed in the letter I see from the National Railway Museum. But all that aside, I think the options that staff have heard in the past to repair and display the asset, the locomotive, really came down to a funding issue, where whilst we may agree that's a great thing to do, actually there's that a matter for BDC and ratepayers, or is it a matter for the interested, proponents of that? So in terms of the request, council staff don't have a view. It's not something that is our core business. We certainly would like to represent the local interests in it, but that's about as far as I feel staff can go. And that way there'd be no objection from staff for what's proposed, in so much as there was no cost to ratepayers. But other than that, it's just been working with the local preservation society to reflect their views.
So who owns it? Who do we think owns it?
So council staff do not know.
Okay. Douglas, have you got something?
Yeah. Well, my chance of actually working on the sense my over Weybridge to be sort of that up with Kira, we actually looked at that, there was a discussion about that. They might be able to try out that area or do something there, so it's a conversation and see if we can help out. But council.
Okay, so I have to refresh my memory what this letter's asking me for.
To give it to them.
It's not mine to give, or not ours to give, so. Okay.
Well, we're sure it's not in the constitution when they round up for the by default came to us.
I just want to pass these people on to the right people, that's all, but I'll work with that, that's okay. And there was something else in there. Oh, the petition, the hectare toilets. And so I will look to staff for an update on where that got to. Executive. Mike, yep.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the petitions recognise, of course, these questions to the amendment costs to service the facility. What I understood was that it was in the region of $20,000 to $30,000 per annum in that order. And I heard that the way forward may be for that to be considered as a long-term plan consultation topic or submission from those community members supporting the petition. The position of, in terms of the asset at the moment, is not to disestablish it for now, just in case the consultation process leads towards it being reinstated. So that's why it's still in the field. Advice necessary to do another, follow another action.
I'll look to our Northern Buller constituent representatives.
Yeah. So, really, the cost that you worked out was the exact cost, because I know that had to be emptied because it's a self-contained, Mike, sorry. It was a self-contained toilet, so you're saying that the exact cost for like servicing a toilet, cleaning the toilet, all that sort of stuff, that was about $30,000 a year, is what you're saying?
Yes.
Through the chair.
There's an operational cost to keep the
Yeah.
asset fit for public use. Yes.
Right, okay.
Circa 30 grand.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's the feeling? We've got a petition here. The toilet's still sitting where it was, despite I thought we were last year we were moving it, but we didn't. So it's still there now. What's the feeling of the room to include it in the long-term plan? How do I respond to the petitioners?
To put in the long-term plan?
Doesn't hurt, no?
Can we give any information back to them about the cost and like the use of it and how much that would work out per toilet visit? I think that might be a good idea just to put things into perspective, because if it's 20 grand a year, that's $380 a day. If you have 10 people going to the toilet a day, that's $40 per visit. Not sure if that would be worth it. So if the community could have that information, they may feel a bit more informed in their decisions.
Happy with that, Mr. Mayor, provided you do the same for every toilet in Westport.
Yeah. So it's just okay, so what's the way forward?
Well, I did figures, started on some figures 18 months ago and it came out about $30,000, so it's a costly exercise and council want to pay for it, and I agree with Rome that we do tend to miss out. We haven't come with our hands out, so long-term plan, we might have to make some decisions, and seeing we've put aside $331,000 for Westport, we might be able to handle 30,000.
Put it off. We'll actually put it off.
Yeah,
Put it
so
off.
we might be able to take 10%.
Okay, councillor Weston.
Yeah, I see, there's toilets also, similar to the toilets up at the Channel Creek, which I don't know how they dock or they toilets in the council. And that I think is, see them up here.
Councillor Grafton.
So again, if this is costs to run it for the year, is there a cost to get it up and running again?
Minimal, I would say.
Yeah. The problem with the issue with this is it's not a cost to the community. If it goes in the long-term plan, it's a cost to everybody, because it'll just be, it won't be a targeted rate for the toilets at Hector. So that's, I'm not sure how you differentiate that. Councillor O'Keefe then, ready.
I also heard that there's quite a bit of damage inside the toilets. Anyone actually opened the toilets up and had a look? Because I hear that there's the hand basin's been smashed, and yeah, it's one of the reasons why it hasn't sort of, I don't know, that was from what I hear. So we might look at that as well. That could be an extra cost.
Councillor Reddy.
I think I'm still here. I don't know, I'm not a plumber, so, but there has been comments made about having to refill the water and what have you. I'm not sure of the number of people who would actually be using it. We don't have a way of compostable for what has been used. This is going beyond a little bit, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But there are questions about having a toilet in that environment, in that area, and I fully support it. But I don't necessarily support 20 to 30,000 simply because, not so much because only a couple of people a day will be using it, that we don't know it's there in case people do need to use it. Same as we've got one of them coming, 400,000 when we have it on Broadway. So it is there not just for ratepayers or community members, it's also there for people who are travelling through. And I'm just asking the question in terms of the format of that particular toilet. Have other options not been reviewed? I mean, for example, in Arthur's Pass, you go to the toilets there and they're compostable. I'm saying, what were they compostable? Yeah, so they don't run on water. So why are we suddenly getting mixed up with this cost of 30,000? A lot of which, I mean, let's face it, to clean the toilet's only $20 an hour, minimum wage, what have you, but I'm just exaggerating there.
You're putting your hand up.
I'll do it so long as I get mileage. Yeah, but sorry,
yeah, we're not going to get into a new set of toilets. We've got ones that are there. Councillor O'Keefe.
So I did float the idea of having a more public consultation around these toilets, because they are the easiest toilets to install but the most expensive to maintain, and we already own the asset, right? So is there other things we can maybe move it to plumb it in, so we don't have to empty it all the time, which would be less of a cost? It's a bit more work around that, and that's but from what I hear, they are not into having a public meeting about it, or
We're talking about whether it's just included in LTP. We're really only talking about what I'm going to write back to these people at the moment.
You're going to write back that we're including it in the LTP.
I think that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool.
That's impractical to move because we don't have any sewage systems like that.
Yeah. Councillor Howard.
Is there still a toilet at the start of the Charming Creek? Is there a toilet?
No, it's closed. It's closed.
Yeah. Is it talking to Doc about that being open? Because this isn't just about Ngakawau having conversations at Charleston too. They want an additional toilet on the main road, even though the dock. But I'm just like, well, it's not going to happen. We've only got such a certain budget, and
yeah, but they're all decisions, LTP decisions, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So anything else out of my mayor's report to question me on? Councillor Reading?
Just regarding the train, they've acknowledged that there's discussion around ownership. So once again, we can't get involved, as Mike was mentioned, without understanding the ownership. It's nice to have, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to push it aside, but we can't really do as council, do anything for it until, and it's up to the railway preservation, I would have thought, to determine that, rather than ask us to make a decision. But I wholeheartedly support your objective.
Yep. Okay, thank you. Any other questions out of mayor's report? Somebody like to move it? Councillor Farlett, seconded. Deputy Mayor Basher. All those in favour? Any against? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. CEO report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Firstly, just an apology, the two attachments didn't quite make it with my report. That's my fault. And they are sitting now in your resource centre, and we will make these available on our website with the agenda after this meeting. But my summary does cover off the key points. Look, I think just touching on, we started the first of our public workshops last week around our long-term plan and the challenges we've got. I'm not going to drill into too much around that, aside to say that we will be looking at adopting our consultation material and the draft long-term plan on the 27th of March at the council meeting here. And then we do have a good chunk of time for public consultation. And so the team are currently working through the budget and really drilling into the details to make sure that what we can bring back early in the new year reflects your feedback from last week. Probably the scanning component of this report's around the coalition agreement and some of the impacts to local government, and Tai Tuata have done a good summary, and that is one of the attachments referred to. As we are, and as we noted last week, legislative reform is going to be one of our biggest challenges as an organisation. So I've just popped in there under each of the key areas around the repeal of Three Waters, the repeal of the Natural and Built Environment Act and the Spatial Planning Act, and infrastructure and regional development. I've just put in there what I think our response/impact looks like, and happy to take any questions about our proposed response. And then we do just have an update on the representation review, noting that we have the data there in the tables provided, and again, probably Douglas and I are happy to take any questions on that. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Questions on the CEO report? Councillor Naylor.
Just on the representation review, you've got that with the proposed forecast population as noted the above fits inside the council. Population split within the acceptable plus or minus 10%. Well, obviously Sydney's 13.78%. So in the past we've had an exemption. Will you be applying for an exemption again?
Yeah, sorry, the second table down was the one for the confusion there, because that's the current table. That's
okay.
First apologies for that confusion through, but
my mistake.
Right, well, it's fair, it's not
good.
It's quite small.
You can hardly see it.
Oops, okay. Any other questions on the CEO report? Okay, somebody happy to move that? Move Deputy Basher, seconded Councillor Grafton. All those in favour? Any against? Yep, that's carried unanimous. Thank you. Okay, committee chairs, verbal updates. Let's do these by exception. If you don't have anything to do, then don't. ICB?
I'll let Councillor Naylor report back because he chaired the meeting for me. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The major item on the agenda was the swimming pool, and we've had a report from Stephen Cook, and thanks to the CEO for the good work in getting him up here. He added a lot to the discussions. So we're looking at that coming in February, and really good recommendations for the future of the pool. In terms of the representation review, we didn't actually make a decision, but certainly didn't get any feedback from the board members that they wanted to disband the board. So I'm not sure whether we need an official decision in February for that, but certainly no, unless we get strong public support for disbanding us, we're looking at carrying on. Nothing else really, just we've had some hiccups in terms of the advertising. We'd like to see that sorted out. And also the path into the cenotaph, we thought was going to be finished. It had been reported that it was in hand going to be finished. If that doesn't, talking to staff at the meeting, it's been deemed to be out of scope for the work that's been done around St George Park. The RSA have actually volunteered to do it themselves if necessary, but we really need it done by Anzac Day anyway, or well before Anzac Day. Apart from that, that's all to report. Certainly going to delve into that list from the Ikamatua people, and what I promised them is that we'll move a meeting out there early in the new year, probably in February.
Excellent. Yeah, I felt a lot of the points they raised were great ICB type, advocacy points to pick up, so that's really good to hear. Can we just get some clarity on the ICB around the representation review? So the decision making on that, like in or out, sits at this table, doesn't it? Or not?
Yes, it's part of the representation review. The fact that there's no comment, that's fine at the moment, with that investment proposal anyway. And that at the moment would be on the basis that the ICB is going to.
Yep. Thank you. Ned is absent. Regulatory and hearings, anything to add?
Well, just great to see the keeping your animals bylaw passed. It was something that we sort of got a hospital pass from the last council, but hopefully ex-councillor Rutherford's very happy that we managed to pass that within the deadline that I set myself, and certainly not what we thought was going to happen in terms of the waste management, but I think that we've got a good pathway forward here.
Cool. Councillor Howard, Community Environment.
Get them busy going out joining the project group, looking at the future future bullet adapting to climate change, and we've been engaged with it. The more rural segments around Bulla about the climate changing and planning, but we've been going out and just finding out what they value about the areas and what's important to them, and it's just stage one of a 4-stage program with a website up and running that anyone can go in and view the feedback and actually add their own comments about what they love about the area. And the other thing coming up is tomorrow I'll attend a regional workplace project, and we're at this Action 5 on their program is looking at older workers. So after that meeting, I'll distribute their survey results and information that they've had feedback around how to accommodate and improve older workers' engagement in the workplace.
Awesome, thank you. Questions for Councillor Howard? Thank you. TTPP, I briefly mentioned that in the mayor's report. I don't know if there's anything else to add there. Joint Committee, Operating District hasn't met, needs to. West Coast Health Localities Project, Graham, anything?
Still waiting for a meeting with Mr. Rarity, or Dr. Rarity, in terms of what he's proposing of the future of localities.
The new minister? Yep, okay. Councillor.
Can I just answer a question on that, please? The whole idea of this initially was Three Waters moving away from council and the more of the, if you like, the health coming into council. Has there been any talk yet about, obviously we have to hear, that both with Three Waters and with this through the chair. So is there anything that we can talk about here? just in terms of where this particular project's going?
Well, I guess the health, they're saying is the wrong word, it's all about wellbeing. And of course, councils have a great effect on the determinants of wellbeing, you know, being housing, sewerage, water, all of those things. So yeah, so we've been invited onto the governance group, and I think we've had a request for somebody on the operational side of it, from council staff, either from one representing the three councils or one from each council. That's yet to be decided, I think. And yeah, so the wellbeing rather than health things are something that we need to be involved in.
There's just a trickle of advisories coming from ministries now, so I think there's been more today, but they're activating their 100-day plan. But nothing specific to health yet that I've seen.
So just going on though, we'll talk about when we see health. Is there a reason why we're using the word health instead of well-being? Through the chief, sorry. I just take it as being.
Yeah, that's our word. I mean, it should really be called Takiwapa Tini project or something, I guess.
So the project people themselves and the governance group are focusing on wellbeing, which is much wider than health. Health is one part of wellbeing. Yeah. So that could come off there, I suppose.
Yeah. Finally, Regional Transport Committee.
Oh, we haven't had a meeting yet, but obviously through the new government's 100-day plan, they're making a few changes to the land transport rules, setting of speed limits and various other things. So we'll be having to discuss at our next meeting early next year with the regional council. And that's pretty much all I have to say.
Yeah. Thank you. So yeah, the government have come out in the 100-day plan and sort of set aside the obligation on council to do the full speed management plan sort of work, which we'd already started on here. So it's very fresh, literally 2 days ago. So obviously the infrastructure team and Tony will keep abreast of what that means for the Regional Transport Committee and the work plan that's going on there. Okay, I move that we receive those verbal updates. Seconded Councillor Naylon. All those in favour? Any against? That's carried. Thank you. Righto, public excluded report. Oh, sorry, public forum. It will be a response to Jackie, just that I think she's well aware of what happened there. So cool. Right, there's a recommendation to move into public excluded for 5 items for the reasons that are listed there. I won't read them all out. I'll move that way. Is there a seconder? Seconded Councillor Howard. Any discussion required on these?
Just a question, please, on against it, per se, just a local purpose reserve change. Why would it have to be under excluded? It's not confidential as such, it's public land. I'm not just asking, that's all it's not a big.
Public land on private land, I suppose. There's private aspects.
Yeah. It's a boundary change for a private person, I think. Yeah. Okay, so all those in favour? Any against? Right, carried. We're now unanimously. We're now in public excluded. 5-minute break. Thanks. Thank you, Alan. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah.